Hey, everybody, welcome back to Deserts of Plenty. My name is Ralph. Today, I want to talk about us versus them, this inherent bias within humans to form groups and tribes. It is part of just our makeup. And you may be the unicorn who doesn't do this, but by and large, human beings do this. So I'll start off with in Robert Sapolsky's book, Behave, which I have to recommend. Uh, he talks about these a series of studies, uh, under that are all under the umbrella of subliminal other race face exposure and amygdala activation. So when a person is shown in these studies a face of another race for about 30 milliseconds, which is too fast for conscious recognition, two things happen. Number one, the amygdala activates. That's part of your brain that's involved with threat and stress responses. And this only happens when people see faces from out groups. So, a white person seeing a black face, a black person seeing a white face, et cetera, et cetera. And the part of our brain that recognizes faces when you see, and this works, white people, black, it's for everybody, right? If you're shown a face of a different race, the brain takes longer to recognize that as a face. This happens before conscious thought, which takes about 100 milliseconds. This is happening in 30 milliseconds. So, we tend to, all human beings, regardless of where you come from, you're shown a face of a different race for too fast for human consciousness to see it, you will have a more negative reaction to a face that's of a different race. And that's true of everybody. That's right. And that's depressing, but it's a real thing and it's just good to be aware of, right? Human beings are wired from our DNA up to form in groups and out groups. We tend to do that, right? And it even extends to arbitrary groupings. So there's, again, more studies where individuals come, and when they arrive, the people running this study will flip a coin, say heads or tails, and if it comes up tails, people go to one side of the room. If it comes up heads, they go to the other side of the room. And even though that's so arbitrary, the head group, the people who got heads, will tend to tribe up. The people who got tails will tend to tribe up. For you and I and for everybody else, again, by and large, like, you will be more favorable. You will react more favorably towards somebody who has the same birthday as you, to someone who has the same name, first name, who comes from the same hometown, drives the same car, likes the same sports team. Like, these are very arbitrary and, I wouldn't say meaningless things, but by and large, quite without import. But that is enough for us to start feeling more well disposed towards certain people, because we have this tendency to form groups and clusters, because it's the way we were, right? The way we used to, the way we spent, 90+% of our time on this earth as a human species has been in these smaller groups of like 100 to 150 individuals walking around, hunter gatherers, right? Picking up food where we can and moving on, because you don't go to the bathroom or you eat. That's not a good idea, as we found out when we started making cities. Anyway, there are, some people on the left say that this evolutionary psychology doesn't exist. It's not true. It doesn't. It is true. And that's not to say that, well, it's part of human nature, therefore it's natural and we should just accept it. No, it's like, it's part of human nature. We should recognize it, call it out, and then embrace it and internalize it, so that we can say, okay, all right, brain, I recognize that this guy over here just told me that he has the same first name as me, and now he wants to interest me in this sale. Well, I like it, but maybe I like him because he's got the same first name as me, or he looks like me, or he likes the same sports teams, or, he went to the same school, or whatever. He's got two kids roughly the same age. These are all things that make us tend to like people and be drawn towards them. And vice versa, be less inclined towards people who have obvious differences than us. That's just the nature of who we are as a knee-jerk thing. That's not to say that you can't form great attachments to people who are vastly different than you, whether that's visually different or whatever. You can, but it's a knee-jerk snap judgment that we make to be more favorable towards people who look like us and seem like us than those who do not. And that is a problem because you can see in the world today, if you are online at all, the differences between us. And so what I want to talk about is, now that we know that, how do we not contradict it? How do we negate it, right? And Martin Luther King, the great civil rights advocate, he was constantly faced with people attacking him and trying to make us versus them dichotomies. So when MLK Jr. would be criticized, often by white critics, he didn't attack back. Instead, he reframed their argument. He drew a bigger circle. So, if a white person came up and said, you all want special rights or whatever, and the black people want this, and Martin Luther King would say, when you say black and white, I just see man, like we're both men, right? Or we're all human beings, or we're all parents, we're all Americans. We all want the same things. We want to grow up and live mostly unmolested as much as possible, to have self-determination, the pursuit of happiness, to have our children grow up safe and do better than we did, like the American quote unquote dream. But I think it's a human dream to want a lot of those things, right? So his strategy was to highlight similarities, not differences. And in this way, he could build bridges, he could build empathy, and he could bring people around to his way of thinking. Nothing puts people off more than screaming at them, right? And telling them they're wrong. You can force people to do what you want, but they will hate you for it, and they won't get over it easily. The only way to change people's minds is to help them find the path to changing their mind, right? And in our modern polarization, where you've got like 5 to 10% of the people on the extreme right and 5 to 10% of the people on the extreme left, and most of us just stuck in the middle, exhausted by all the noise and just wanting to tell people to shut up. And it's hard because obviously the people on, what we would consider our other side don't want to talk to us, because they just see us as the part that's on the extreme of the other side. And we can't even talk to our own side, quote unquote, on that, because they'll be mad at us for not being pure enough. I remember in the 2016 election, the build up to that election, the American election. And, when Bernie was running against Hillary, and I was a big Bernie fan. I mean, I'm a Canadian, I can't vote, but I was more a Bernie fan. And my liberal friends who had more in common with Bernie than Hillary were very mad at me and for like supporting Bernie, because they thought he couldn't win. I think he could have won, but anyway, they were, and I got a lot of heat for that, right? Some people called me a misogynist, and I was like, what's going on? And then what happened after that was really interesting, because when Bernie dropped out, and then it was Jill Stein was the head of the Green Party, and she was running as the anti-Hillary on the left campaign. And the same people, or some of the same people who called me a misogynist, were calling her like batshit crazy. I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, draw bigger circles. What do we have in common? Like, take the extremes right now, the far right and the far left. What did they have in common? Passion. These are incredibly passionate people, right? They both have their own media and influencers, right? Whether it's Fox or whatever on the right, and MSNBC or whatever on the left, and they're influencers. That's more obvious. Both sides are distrustful of science when it goes against their beliefs. They're both convinced in their own righteousness and they're right, and they see the other side as stupid at best, criminal at worst. Both sides believe that the ends justify the means, seemingly. They both think, in my opinion, that violence could be justified. And they're both much more interested in who did something, or, who did or said something, rather than the content of that thing. And they're more likely to overlook transgressions that hurt their side. Oh, downplay it, right? Oh, well, that's not as bad as we thought. So they have a lot in common, right? I mean, they wouldn't acknowledge that, I don't think. But um, but if you start from a place of commonality, we're all human beings, right? Don't we all want the world to be a better place? Don't we all want to be left alone, by and large, by, you know, power structures, be they government, corporate, religious? We just want to live our lives. So, how do we build bridges and draw bigger circles? Stop screaming at people. Ask questions, right? Start from a place of non judgment. How did you come to that belief? What about this idea? What about this idea do you find compelling, right? Uh, what does it look like if you're wrong? Or what would have to happen for you to change your mind about that, right? If you think person X is the greatest thing since sliced bread, what would change? What would that person have to do to change your mind about them, right? Just to start them thinking about it. You know, people change their minds on their own. We can walk them part of the way and we can show them, but it's up to them to make the connections and understand. I know a lot of us talk about, like, how can so and so believe that? Well, if believing, quote unquote crazy things increases your standing in your community, you will believe crazy things, right? Okay, maybe not you specifically, but by and large, human beings will believe crazy things, right? Because we want to belong. Uh, Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Righteous Mind, another amazing book, uh, he's talking about, how coming to an opinion or a point. He says, and again, evidence based, first we have an inkling about something. Oh, I think, X is true. I think, you know, unicorns are real. I feel that's a thing, right? And then once you feel that, our tendency is to go out and make it true by, like, looking for evidence of it. And the internet makes that so easy to find proof of anything. Aliens exist. The earth is flat. We never went to the moon. Evolutionary psychology is a made up thing that doesn't exist. Vaccines will kill you. Whatever, like, vaccines, all vaccines should be taken without any hesitation. Like, you can find evidence for anything you want to believe. So one good test is to always ask yourself the hard questions first. Why do I believe this? Right? About the things that you hold the most dear, right? Because this will make you more harder to manipulate, right? If you ask yourself, why do I believe X? Why do I believe the earth is round? Why do I believe that? Right? Well, what if it isn't true? What if the other side is right? What would my life look like if I questioned it? And just as a segue, the late great Christopher Hitchens, in my opinion, he was asked once about why we shouldn't have laws against hate speech, and he had a very compelling reason. He said, because if we don't outlaw speech, then if you're out, like, and that, I mean outlaw like hate speech, or having people have really terrible opinions. Let's say, like, oh, all men are terrible. Let's say that's a viewpoint someone would have. All men are terrible. The world would be so much better off if we just had a way of naturally inseminating women, to only give birth to daughters, and there were no men. That would be ideal. Okay, that's a point of view someone could have. And why we shouldn't outlaw it is because if someone says that to you, you have to have a reason why they're wrong. You have to be able to articulate why we shouldn't, get rid of all men, or we shouldn't. We should have, laws protecting certain groups. Like, you need to be able to articulate that, which means you have to think about it. Which means, as a society, we are now much more uh, intelligent and able to talk about these things because we're thinking about them. Like right now, I don't have to. I can just know, right? Like, oh, it's hard to think of anything without but, capital punishment, right? I can just say, okay, capital punishment is wrong, and that's all. That's it, and I don't have to think about it because there's no chance of it being enacted in this country again. I don't think. Uh, but let's say it was something that was really about to come back, right? Like it is in the States, and I wanted to fight against it. I would have to think and articulate why. I couldn't just say, "Oh, it's bad," and that's it. I have to think about it. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. So, we have internal biases. We tend to tribe up. It's good to be aware of it so that you can counteract it. Because, as Jonathan Haidt says, if you feel a tendency towards someone just because, whatever, the way they look, where they're from, their name, then you will come up with reasons why you should trust them. I don't want to go on any longer, but basically, one thing a con man likes to hear is someone saying, "I can't be conned." He's like, "Oh, that's the person." Because once he's got you a little bit, he's got you because you already told you can't be conned. Therefore, if I've got you just a little bit, then I didn't con you. So you're right. Anyway, and so we have this natural tendency. You can work against it, draw bigger circles again around those between you and the people you disagree with. Start from places that you have things in common, and we're all human beings. That's number one. We're all born, and we're all gonna die, and that's a good starting point. All right, that's it for me. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.